This is Singles Going Steady, and we have a special preview for you today. I'm Adrienne Meddock.
And I'm Steve McGowan.
Here's a sneak peek at an upcoming full interview with author Will Birch, whose biography, Cruel to be Kind, The Life and Music of Nick Lowe, is hitting the shelves on August 20, 2019. We'll have a full discussion with Will about this remarkable book soon, but we wanted to share a taste with you now. But welcome, Will Birch.
Hi.
It's great to speak with you, Will. What is the imprint your book is on?
The publisher in the USA is Da Capo Press.
Da Capo, okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you work on this book?
I started about 2011, finished it about a year ago. So
Wow.
7 years.
Wow.
And I guess you could really say you've been working on it for a couple decades.
Yeah. Some of the material was in an earlier book I wrote called No Sleep Till Canby Island, the pub rock scene. And this is more about Nick Lowe than the scene in general. Okay.
We were noticing as we were going through the book how much of the, how you were ever present for many of the events in the book. As a firsthand account, was there anything that you uncovered in your research that kind of surprised you? Like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on as well.
Yeah, there were certain things like that. I mean, I was on that kind of pub rock scene with my own group, and I was a big fan of Brinsley Schwartz and later Nick's solo stuff. And I worked with some of the people in his organisation some years later. I got to hear stories that I didn't know, obviously, always pleased to hear them. But I did sort of know quite a lot of it. And the most interesting facts I uncovered were more about Nick's genealogy. When I investigated his great-grandparents, his American great-grandfather.
Right.
And Nick didn't know this at all. I told him over lunch one day, I said, "Did you know your great-grandfather fought in the American Civil War?" And Nick said, "No, he was very surprised. he was very surprised, and he imagined men with stovepipe hats and brocade waistcoats, sort of Abraham Lincoln image."
Right.
And he vaguely knew that his great-grandmother, this guy's wife, was of European, Austrian descent. He had a vague idea, but he didn't know any facts about them at all. But the most single amazing fact I uncovered, which is really trivial, I mean, it's not important at all, but when I wrote my book about Ian Dury 10 years ago, Ian lived in a flat in London in Hammersmith called Digby Mansions, and he lived in apartment number 54. And when I was researching Nick's great-grandmother, she submitted a patent application in London for something she had invented and gave her address as 54 Digby Mansions. So Nick Lowe's...
That made me gasp. When I read that, I was like, oh!
Nick Lowe's great-grandmother and Ian Dury shared the same address, albeit 60 or 70 years apart. Yeah, incredible.
Yes.
Well, who do we write to get a plaque? We should really have a plaque there.
Well, funnily enough, there is a campaign at the moment for an Ian Dury plaque in London, a blue plaque, but they haven't decided quite where it's going to be put yet because he lived in several different addresses.
And he actually called that Cat S Mansions, right?
No, that was a previous apartment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I had the wrong one.
Yeah, that was the one. The one you referred to was near the Oval Cricket Ground in South London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to get off the subject of Nick Lowe, but I must say that your Ian Dury book is fabulous, and I hope we will get another occasion to talk to you about that.
Thank you.
But anyway. When we talk about Nick growing up, I was wondering if you saw any possible similarities with Joe Strummer, because he was overseas with his dad, and I know Joe was the son of a diplomat, and Nick's dad was an RAF officer, right, an attaché.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're both left-handed, and they're both born about 2 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Joe kind of disguised or covered up his background much more than Nick has done. I think that Joe was really more of a character. I love Joe. It's not a criticism. Right. He was great. I love the Clash. Mm-hmm. But I think Joe disguised it, whereas Nick Lowe was very proud of his family background and his father's career in the Royal Air Force, and talks openly about that period and doesn't in any way try to hide or disguise it, whereas some musicians, especially rock musicians, tend to obscure their past if there's the slightest whiff of privilege or money or education. It's not very rock and roll. But Nick is the complete antithesis of that. He's quite proud of it.
So I think it was interesting that Nick Lowe, I sort of confirmed to me what I understood about public school students, in that they really had an aversion to appear to be working hard, that trying hard or the appearance of trying hard is a no-no. And that really seems to be something, I don't know if that was Nick's tendency before he hit public school or a result of it, but and I know you've co-written with him and you've also worked with him on this book. Does that seem to be true, that he has this this sort of appearance of ease, this wanting to seem like things are easy, that they come naturally to him?
Yeah, I think Nick's pretty relaxed about stuff, his music career, his touring, his recording these days. I think there was a time, probably in the late 70s, early 80s, when he did break into a sweat once or twice, when he was signed to major record labels and he was under pressure to deliver, an album every year and write 12 or 15 songs and then go on tour. And he got on that endless cycle of tour album that took him more or less through the 1980s. But these days, that is literally in the past. And I think it's in the past in that he doesn't want to work like that anymore. He takes things at a slightly more gentlemanly pace.
So that's a sneak preview of what will be coming up soon, where we'll have a full discussion with Will Birch about this wonderful biography of Nick Lowe, Cruel to Be Kind, the life and music of Nick Lowe. And it's just a great book. We can't recommend it highly enough. It's hitting shelves on August 20, 2019. So if you hear this before that date, be sure to pre-order or grab a hold of it if it's after that date. Thanks for listening, and absolutely, do yourself a favor if you're interested in pub rock, in punk rock, and stiff records. There's just so much to learn here, and it's just a great read, very well documented, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Talk soon. Bye.